All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Klemchek. I'm from the Schenectady Soil and Water Conservation District. A little bit about us. We're an organization in Schenectady County tasked with conserving and enhancing the natural resources of Schenectady County. We also run the compost facility for the county. So we work with municipalities, landowners, nonprofit organizations to preserve the natural resources of Schenectady County. This is one of the things, we do. We give this good housekeeping training each year to the municipalities as part of the MS4 requirements. So I want you guys to be involved. If you have questions, feel free to, ask them. I might call on some people. A little participation will be good. So here we go. So the Federal Clean Water Act is why we're here today. The goal is clean water. We want the waters to be fishable, swimmable, and drinkable. And the way that this is done is regulating the discharges of pollutants into our waterways and setting water quality standards for surface waters. This can be urban and agricultural runoff. So we have a large footprint on this world, and this is a way to help, offset those, sometimes destructive things that we have, such as oil, other pollutants. So we want to keep those out of the waterways, and this is how we can mitigate those effects. So stormwater management is mandated by the Environmental Protection Agency. It's required, as we just saw, by the amendments to the Clean Water Act in 1987. It's implemented in New York State by the DEC and the regulated municipalities. So who knows what municipal separate storm sewer? Oh, sorry, I just gave it away. Who knows what MS4 stands for? Anybody? All right, well, we're... come on. All right, well, that's why we're here today, is to learn a little bit about the system in which Schenectady County is under. So it's Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. So this means that the water that goes into our catch basins, our ditches, is not treated before it goes into the Mohawk River, in our case. So some municipalities have large sanitation facilities to clean that water before it's put into, a river or something. But in Schenectady County, that water that goes into our catch basins from the roads goes right into the Mohawk River, in our case. So the goal is to keep that water as clean as possible before it goes into the river. Why do we do that? We want to keep our water clean, right? We drink water. Our plants, our animals depend on that water. And if it's polluted, there's going to be some issues. So, like I said, the water does not get treated. It is conveyed through water systems, ditches, catch basins, culverts. It's not part of a combined sewer. So the sewer is separated from stormwater, and it doesn't get treated. And that's the big thing. So in a regulated MS4 community, there's a stormwater management program in place. Usually there's an MS4 coordinator who implements the plan. And there's, 6 key aspects to the stormwater management plan. Some of these are taken care of, such as public education and outreach by groups such as the Water Quality Coordinating Committee, and that public participation and involvement is really, just landowners doing what they can. In our case, in municipal operations, illicit discharge detection and elimination, which is 3, and 6, pollution prevention and good housekeeping of municipal operations, is what we can do to keep our water as clean as possible. 4 and 5 are really important to construction sites, and even some of the municipal operations such as culvert replacement and ditching. So it all kind of comes into effect, but we're going to really focus on 3 and 6 today. So illicit discharge detection and elimination. There's some requirements within the stormwater management plan and regulations set by DEC for MS4 communities, and that's to map location of all outfalls and receiving waters, and to look at those and survey them from time to time to make sure that, they are functioning properly and there's, the water coming out of them is as clean as possible. Another thing that we can do is report illicit discharges observed in the field. You guys are out there driving the roads, looking at catch basins, to keep an eye out for that. Some of the sources of illicit discharges are failing septic systems, which, we live in an urban area. We don't have a lot of that. But maybe some of the rural areas, we can see that. Laundry wastewaters, improper oil disposal. So the guy that doesn't know what to do with his used oil dumps it down the drain. That's an issue. Illegal dumping in ditches. Those ditches, as I said, flow downhill and eventually into the Mohawk River. So we want to keep, pollutants out of those ditches. And then sediment and litter. So just, dirt or soil, road salt, sand, garbage that people throw out or gets blown around when people put out their garbage for garbage day. We want to make sure that we can keep those ditches and those water conveyances as clean as possible, because they do flow downhill. And then pollution prevention and good housekeeping. Some of the requirements, this can be anything from park maintenance to vehicle maintenance, stream and wetland modification, so culvert replacement. Everything that you guys do on a day-to-day basis. There's BMP'S for which are best management practices, a way to complete the necessary tasks in a way that we can mitigate our mitigate the pollutants that are discharged into these water conveyances via stormwater. You can see the sediment in the one photo there going into the catch basin. That's not an ideal situation. And the big thing, what we're doing today is employee training, educating you guys on some of these practices and to help mitigate, these or that issue. Sorry. So why is stormwater a concern? We already went over some of this, but we care about our plants and animals. We care about our water quality. We drink water, how we need water. And, keeping these pollutants out of the waterways is so critical to make sure that, we have fish for our kids to catch, and have frogs and all the animals that are so critical to our survival in a healthy ecosystem. Where does it come from? Obviously the rain, but paved surfaces, rooftops, impermeable surfaces. are an area where this water is directed to these ditches, and it can increase velocity over those paved surfaces, causing erosion and sedimentation. So, all of what we're going to talk about, these BMPs are going to help mitigate, the amount of stormwater and then the pollutants found in the stormwater. A good example here on the bottom of the picture, a mulched surface or mulched, construction site versus an unmulched construction site. You can see what they do is they simulate a rainfall event over these areas, and you can see this the sedimentation coming off of the box on the left. It's unmulched. The water does not infiltrate into the soil. It runs off. On the far right, a heavily mulched surface. It lessens the impact of the rain falling on the soil and allows it to infiltrate into the soil, greatly reducing the amount of sediment that runs off of that area. So that's why, these BMPs are very important. As we went over, it contains a number of different things: auto waste, litter, pet waste is a big one. We have a lot of parks around here. A good educational thing for the community is pick up after your pet. Yard waste, we run the compost facility, diverting all that waste from the landfills. Niskayuna has a compost facility as well, so that's all great stuff. Picking up leaves, pesticides and herbicides are a big one. Everybody likes a pretty lawn, but it's not always the most environmentally friendly thing. If it's applied at the proper application rate, it can be all right. But we want to make sure that those, application rates are followed. It's not always the more the better, or more the greener. Follow those directions. Here's some good examples. Salt storage. It's critical to have that undercover. A culvert pipe filled with litter. It's a garbage day and it's a windy day. Stuff gets blown around. So regular maintenance, cleaning out the culverts, cleaning up what you can, and is always a good practice. And then construction sites. This is a paved roadway that's completely covered with sediment here on the bottom corner. You get a heavy rain, and all of that is going to get washed off. And as I said, in our case, it's going into a catch basin, through a ditch and into the Mohawk River, carrying with it, nutrients, oil, from the job site. So we want to try and keep stuff clean as much as possible. As I said, here's an example. Going from the ditch to a small stream to a larger river, and the final destination is the Atlantic Ocean in our case, and that's the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, New York City. So our water is ending up there. So we want to try and keep it as clean as possible before it gets there. Some impacts of erosion and sedimentation. It's not only environmental impacts, such as this lower left corner picture. You can see all the silt and sediment that has been deposited into this lake via the river. So as the stormwater flows down that river, it's carrying all that sediment. It hits the lake, which is not moving, right? Lake is kind of stagnant. That sediment settles down into the lake and can pile up, and so you can see how that's built up there at the mouth of that river, causing severe environmental impact. And then, like I said, not only environmental, but money. It can cause severe damage to roadways, property damage. There's some good examples here of, a road washed out by, a heavy rain event. Not everything can be, we can't fix everything, and we can't protect, especially on some of these really heavy rainfall events. But we can do our best to try and mitigate it with some of these BMP'S that we'll talk about, and that. So here we're going to get into some of these BMP'S and actually discuss what we can do. So the municipal responsibilities for pollution prevention measures. Really, there's going to be a lot of things kind of repeated here, and that's to get you to think about it more. It's really about maintaining a clean working environment, organized, contain, paint, solvents, hazardous materials, spill response. Quickly and effectively cleaning up these spills is critical. To prevent pollutants in our stormwater. Installing proper erosion and sediment controls during excavation projects is always a good thing. Filter socks is an example of that. Some best management practices you can see here, and this is what we're going to go through today. So spill response, like I said, it's critical to be quick and effective at cleaning up these spills. There shouldn't be a delay. It should be immediately we get those spills cleaned up using some of these practices, filters, absorbent pads, cat litter can be used, absorbent materials to pick up those spills and clean it up. We don't want rain coming down and washing them into the storm sewer. We want to have those cleaned up before that. So a big thing is properly store the materials, use secondary containment systems, use those absorbent materials, and then provide a way to properly dispose of those. We don't want to just be putting those in the trash. We want to have a proper way to dispose of them. This is obviously not what we want to see, and we want to try and prevent, from happening. So how can we do that? Install secondary containment systems such as oil water separators. And so those separate, as the name implies, separates the oil from the water. The oil and pollutants, the sediment are then pumped out, by a contractor and treated in a proper manner. The water is usually conveyed into a settling basin to settle out and properly be treated. Checking the containers for leaks, keeping a clean working environment, making sure that stuff is under cover, inside storage if possible, and protect the storm drains. So like with everything, it requires maintenance. It's not just go out there and do it and leave it. These things always need to be monitored and maintained. So pumping out the water and oil separators, protecting the drains, cleaning out receivers, clean up spills immediately, have brooms, have everything ready to go, have a spill response kit handy with everything labeled so it's not so you're not thinking about it. It's just right there and you're ready to react to the spill. Vehicle and equipment maintenance and fueling. This is a big one with municipal operations. What can we do to, reduce the pollutants within our waterways with that? An important one is report damage and leaks immediately. You know, if you got a truck that's leaking some oil, get it fixed, so it's not running down the road leaking the oil. That's all going into our waterways. Conduct the maintenance work inside if you can. It's not always possible. If it's not, maybe find a tarp or something that you can drape over the hood of the truck to keep the rain from washing that down the road. Single-use purpose of bays, it makes it really nice. So when you're working, you have everything you need for a spill, whether it be, changing the oil, everything you need in that bay is there. And you're not trying to search for stuff, when you really need it. And again, appropriately disposing of the materials after you have cleaned up the spill. Again, in these maintenance areas, oil water separators are always good to have. Never leave vehicles unattended while you're fueling, in case the mechanisms to stop the pump from fueling don't work. You don't want fuel all over the place. Let's keep everything clean. It should take place on a concrete pad. There should be proper fueling areas where they're curbed. The fuel isn't, if there is a spill, it's not allowed to flow into a catch basin or a ditch. And again, in these areas, spill response materials should be readily available so that if it does happen, we can clean it up. And once again, maintenance is a big thing. We got to maintain a clean work area, remove contaminants, use non-hazardous cleaners if possible, repair and replace leaking containers. There's alternate cleaning options, steam cleaning, pressure washing, instead of using solvent is always a good thing. Why introduce a pollutant if you don't need it? So just trying to do what we can to mitigate the amount of pollutants that we're using or hazardous materials we're using is something that we can do. So roadway and bridge maintenance, whether it be replacing a culvert, painting lines on the road, cleaning the ditches out. There's a lot of things that municipal operations do on a day-to-day basis that can cause, contaminants and pollutants to enter our roadways. But how can we mitigate that? So here's some examples. Sediment from construction sites. Road salt is obviously can negatively affect our natural environment. Particulates from dry paint and abrasive compounds, and then debris such as garbage and that. So what are some of the BMP'S that we can do out there to during our day-to-day operations? We can incorporate preventative maintenance and planning, plan ahead, have those BMP'S in place. How is the water going to be treated before it gets to the the stream or the river? Pave in dry weather, not always possible during summer storms and that, but as much as possible, it's always a best case scenario to do that. Stage road operations, when you can, avoid spills again, cover catch basins, if possible. And as I've said, many times already, clean up the fluid leaks and spills immediately, so we can keep those pollutants from entering the waterways. Also restrict the use of herbicides. So mowing is a time-consuming, thing, but using herbicides is not always the best. So when you're using herbicides, you're killing off that vegetative material, and it's not it's not able to effectively treat the water that's coming off the road. You know, that vegetation is slowing down that water. The roots of that vegetation are allowing the water to infiltrate into the ground. It's taking up pollutants, and you know, the plants will use some of that depending on what it is, and clean the soil. But so killing that off is not ideal. We want to keep that vegetation alive and serving its purpose. So the use of herbicides is not ideal. Better to mow it, even if it is a little bit more labor intensive. Some other BMPs, sweep and vacuum roads. You know, it's going to pick up that sediment, pick up that debris, so it's not carried into, you know, our stormwater system when we have a heavy rain event. As I said, maintain roadside vegetation. So after, you know, ditches are cleaned, there's an example there in the lower corner of hydroseeding. This is a mix of seed, some sort of grass seed, fertilizer, tackifier, and mulch, which protect the soil, you know, from erosion during these heavy rain events. And the idea is to get that grass, get that vegetation growing as quickly as possible so that it can serve the purpose that it's meant to, and, you know, filter the runoff and allow that water to infiltrate as much as possible. So having that water in the ground is always better than having it flowing down a ditch, right? We want it to, you know, go into the ground where it can be stored, instead of, you know, running down the road ditch, and, you know, gaining speed, which is going to cause more erosion, right? The faster the water is moving, the more erosion that's going to take place. And that vegetation is going to slow that down and allow it to go into the ground. Clean out, you know, catch basins on a regular basis as much as possible. You know, that'll be one thing, you know, I'm sure a lot of you guys will be doing in the springtime, you know, going around cleaning out. So you know why you're doing that, right? You're taking out that sediment that has, you know, gone down the road, collected in the catch basin. We want those to function properly and be as, you know, convey that water as cleanly as possible. We want to keep the sediment from entering our drains, you know, in the first place, if possible. Direct the runoff of water from bridges into vegetated areas, like I said, so it can settle out and infiltrate the ground, and then stabilize and control runoff from disturbed sites. So you can see the rock that's used to armor the hillside. You know, that's going to help that slope stay in place and keep the sediment from flowing down the hill into the road ditch. We went over some of this hazardous waste and materials management, but it's so critical to keep things organized. You know, keep things organized, keep them labeled. You know what's in it. You're using the right product for the right application. Eliminate floor drains. We don't want, you know, these materials flowing into our waterways. Install, you know, oil water separators again, and reduce stock of materials. Use the first in, first out system. You know, don't accumulate too much. You know, let's just be organized and try and keep things as neat as possible. That's going to be the best case scenario. As I said, there's, you know, different products out there. Let's try and use, you know, the best, you know, most environmentally friendly options if possible, and reduce, you know, the use of these solvents. Ensure proper disposal of all the material afterwards. And again, everything requires maintenance. Just replace and repair any leaking or defective containers. Regular inspection should be done on this, on these sites. And maintain aisle space so that you can do the inspections and make sure that things are in order. Catch basin and storm drain cleaning. We kind of went over some of this, and you guys, this is a major thing that you guys are doing. But the BMPs that we've talked about beforehand, have kind of led up to trying to minimize what goes into these catch basins, right? So, proper street cleaning to avoid, leaves backing up, catch basin, vegetated areas to keep sediment out of our catch basins so that maybe we don't need to vacuum as much. So, if we can put in some of these BMPs in place, we might be able to, not have to do so much, on the back end. So we want to make sure when we are doing these things, we take note, make sure the catch basins are clean, they're free of, debris, so that it's not getting carried through that catch basin into our waterways, making sure that they're not damaged, right? So we don't want foreign objects, that can get into the culverts and clog them. So just regular maintenance, repair if needed, is always something we need to be looking for. As I said, in the spring, you're getting the dirt, the sediment out of the catch basins. In the fall, you're getting the leaves out or preventing the leaves from blocking the catch basins. Establishing proper ditches. So when ditches are created, making sure that they have the proper slope, installing filter socks or, rock bars to help slow down that water, catch some of the sediment, and reducing erosion, and then further reducing sedimentation downstream. So that's a good example of a proper waterway or ditch that will reduce erosion and sedimentation. So during street cleaning, what are some of the BMPs there? Making sure that this is done, at regular intervals or as needed. So say you're working on a construction site or something and there's a lot of dirt coming onto the roadway. Before the end of the day, that should be cleaned up as well as possible. So if there's a rainstorm, throughout the night, that sediment isn't getting carried down the road. Shouldered roads are always better than curbed ones, because curbed roads are keeping that water on a impermeable surface. It's carrying down the road, picking up debris along the way into our catch basins. A shouldered road is going to allow the water to flow off of it into the ditch, and where it can be treated by the vegetation that is hopefully living there, right? Because we're hopefully not spraying herbicides everywhere. So hopefully that vegetation is alive and it's serving its purpose there on the side of that shouldered road. And a big thing is trying to maintain salt-resistant roadside vegetation, right? So salt can kill plants when it's in a high concentration. So salt-resistant roadside vegetation is always a good option. Making sure that the spring sweeping and vacuuming is done. As I said, fall leaf collection is critical to keep our catch basins clean. Vacuum in dry weather if possible. If you have to, implement parking bans so that you can do your job effectively in all the areas of the municipality. Again, maintain equipment. It's so important to check for leaks and repair them immediately. and then stage road operations, cover catch basins if you can. As we saw yesterday, road salt is necessary, but it definitely has, it's down, or it's negative impacts on our environment. So we want to try and, reduce when we can, making sure that we can do what we can to reduce the salt's effect on our environment. This is covering salt storage facilities, making sure that, when a salt, shipment is brought in, everything's cleaned up. When you're filling up trucks, if there's a spill, clean it up immediately so it's not, just swept down the road during the next rain event. Calibrate salt spreaders, and do what we can. Here's a good example of what salt can do to our vegetation, and you may not think about it, but those trees are probably not going to make it too long, and they're a valuable asset to our environment. So we want to try and do what we can to mitigate that impact. So again, calibrate spreaders on a regular basis, clean up spills, educate and train new operators on the hazards of oversalting. So that's what, we're doing right now. There's a lot of good, research going on right now about the impact of salt on roads. Up in the Adirondacks, they're looking at that and what it can do to our water bodies and the aquatic life within those water bodies. So hopefully, in the next few years, things catch on, and maybe there'll be some alternatives that are, more reasonable and more cost effective. So I think, to sum it up, like I said, we have a large footprint on this planet, and what we do isn't always or can negatively affect our environment. But there's a lot of things that we can do to help mitigate that. Using these BMP'S, reduce the pollutants in our municipality that we're using, and which will in turn reduce the pollutants that are entering our waterways, which, like I said, all go into the Mohawk River and eventually into the Atlantic Ocean in our case. So we want to try and keep our water as clean as possible. So if you can just take a second with your operations from day to day and just think about how you can mitigate some of those things that we talked about today, it'll all help. We all need to do our part to keep our water as clean as possible. And any questions, thoughts? All right. I thank you guys for coming out, and have a good day.